Welcome back to the Integrate Intelligently podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Brickler. Today, we're on location. Well, actually, we're not on location. We have a unique event where we have Tim Ryan. Tim, great to see you. Tim is a local here in Northern Kentucky in the greater Cincinnati area. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
And I'm here with, of course, founder and CEO of CAD Talk, Scott Brickler. So Tim, thanks a lot for coming today. I'm looking forward to it. Tell us a little bit about WIA and who you are and what you're doing. I can tell from your shirt that you're somehow affiliated with WIA and IFS. So talk a little bit about what you do there. And
yeah, we had to have the branded shirt for today, so appreciate it. And we're so WIA is a platinum business partner with IFS. We resell the software as well as do implementations. We work in IFS as specific verticals. We work in construction, manufacturing, aerospace and defense, and service industries. We're getting close to a go live every month, but we've done 9 successful go lives in the last 12 months. And what we try to do with those, and these are all on time and on budget, trying to deliver the solutions that we provide for our clients. We sell and implement, or we are a partner uniquely positioned to implement post-sale.
Okay.
So IFS kind of works in many different ways. There's lots of different flavors of how partners, work together. I know that you guys are probably familiar with that, right?
Oh, yeah.
So those are, if we're uniquely positioned to deliver on a solution, then that's what we do.
Okay.
We'll just do the implementation.
So they'll sell the software and then pull you in and say, hey, implement this.
Correct. We like to be in there from the beginning. We have a very good methodology. We have good people who can craft unique solutions, and we have good implementation methodologies and planning and scheduling. And we try to, get people live as quickly as we can. We don't want to take any longer than it needs to, but we also want to do a complete job.
So Tim, you and I met, was that a year ago, maybe?
Roughly. Yeah.
Called us up and you were working on an opportunity at that time. You're talking about your experience. So I know you're in construction. So CAD Talk typically works with a lot of manufacturing companies, and I know that IFS does. It's one of the key industries, and a lot of other ERPs and customers we have work with manufacturing in some form, right? Whether that's going to be project-based manufacturing or aerospace and defense, or even we have consumer goods. But again, because of what we do with integration, but you're unique in the sense that your background is specifically in construction.
Correct. So what I do at WIA is I am the sales executive for North America for construction. So in that vertical, if I'm not, leading that sale, I am involved. My background in construction technology stretches back quite a ways. So I've been in construction my whole life. My dad owned a job shop manufacturing sign company. I worked for a home builder in high school and college in the summers. I worked for a mechanical contractor, and I was a laborer, big guy playing football and wrestling or whatever. I could pick up heavy stuff, and they liked me on the job.
Yeah.
So I always liked getting the overtime for, it was good beer money, right? But I've always enjoyed construction. I've always enjoyed the uniqueness of it. No two projects are the same. No two customers that I work with are the same. I like the newness all the time. And that's actually, we were talking about this before we, sat down here, is change management. Somebody's done something for so long that they want to keep doing it because it's worked, right?
How did you get into construction software? To me, when I think about construction, just in my experience, or even in auto bodies, like you don't really think about software, right? You don't think about software at all. Talk a little bit about how has construction companies, I assume you're talking about large enterprise construction companies, have they used software in the past? Of course, at one point they didn't, but how had they used software? How do they use software now? Where do you think it's going in terms of that software use?
It's gotten, the biggest shift I've seen in the industry is construction software has been around for 40 years, maybe longer, right? But Timberline and Viewpoints and the J.D. Edwards even, they've been around for a long time. But in construction, it was always about managing costs. So a lot of systems out there, they're single entity, cost focused. They don't really get into assets like IFS does, right? So asset management is a big thing that we do. Field service is a very complicated thing because now everything's on a tablet. It used to be white, right on a clipboard, and you bring the tickets back into the office, and then that's how they get. Everything's on an iPad now. It also needs to work offline, just like how a piece of paper does. Oh, yeah. So we need lots of options for those things. But the way construction, the margins are tight. They always have been. Rework and, every project. In manufacturing, you can make the same thing repeatedly, and then you're doing quality checks, and there might be that revision and, how that goes. But like every project is different, and it's way more complicated, and the parts and pieces and the subcontractors and the teams delivering it. And even if you're making the same house, it might be on a different grade. Right. The foundation might be different. The fits and finishes and all the other kinds of things might be different. So everything is a one-off. And those are the kinds of things that as construction has gotten more into, I don't know, let's take a green building, for example, or something like that, or the different lean methodologies and things like that didn't always exist.
Right.
So to accomplish some of those goals and ESG and all those kinds of things, you need a software that tracks what you're doing throughout the process from start to finish. And one of the things is CAD modeling, right?
Mhm.
So everything in construction generally starts with CAD, and they design it. And then the big thing in North America is clash detection. So you get your MEP trades together, and you want to make sure that this ductwork and that electrical and that they're not going to intersect. And you try to make those decisions before that happens. Well, then in North America anyway, it doesn't really flow through to the whole project, right? We're constantly updating that model, but it's really not part of, the hammers and nails and the wrenches and all that kind of stuff. But we're kind of seeing, for efficiencies purposes, that's going to be changing. Like I read an article the other day about a general contractor that's tracking their steel, like as the steel's being installed, they're tracking the modulars and the sequences for the steel in their own little CAD model. So they know, we're at this % complete on the steel fabrication. So we can, schedule the facade to come in or the windows to come in afterwards. And schedule is very important, on time, on budget. That's what we try to do. And I don't think very many construction projects are on time or on budget, and that's what we're trying to fix, right? So
I was going to mention that you're seeing right out of high school, I worked as an electrician for like 4 or 5 years and did commercial electric for a local company here, and it's quite different than manufacturing. So I remember when I came into manufacturing later, it was like there were similarities but different, right? And then like one of the things that we realized with working with construction is like the idea of a part number is actually pretty abstract. It's like there's no part number for a 4x4 window. It's just a 4x4 window.
correct.
And it just causes it just makes everything kind of almost like an engineer to order type of situation. Are you seeing like manufacturing principles kind of pushing down into the construction industry?
Well, I think construction has a lot of point solutions, and procurement is something that a lot of legacy construction applications don't have. That's another thing that IFS does really well. And to have a model turn into a bill of materials, right? That happens in construction just like it does in manufacturing.
It's a takeoff, right? Like
It's a takeoff.
Yeah.
Now, the materials are only one part of that with construction, because there's a labor component that goes along with that. There's equipment that's required, and you have to put that bill of materials into an estimate in order to be able to, and estimating tools are another component between the CAD model and it becoming a budget on a job, right? They want to centralize, like, this part number is what we're building. But then I don't want 16 part numbers. I want this part number, and then I want the 16 suppliers that provide it, right? So those are the kinds of things where I want to send out requests for quotes, because everything is, hopefully it's not the cheapest guy. That's how construction works. If you're doing, I don't know, a paver patio in your backyard, you're going to get 4 people to come out and give you a quote.
Get 4 bids.
And you want the cheapest one, right? But then maybe you pick the guy in the middle, because he's going to do it more like how you want it, kind of thing.
Right.
Well, there's a quality component to that, just like in manufacturing. You want to make sure it's done right, because rework is what kills margin. You don't want to do things twice. So those are the kinds of things where you want to be able to bid out jobs. And a lot of times it's just like being in sales. Every deal that I work on, I'm not going to sell it. That's just part of the nature of what we do, right? But you are bidding jobs, and there is a win rate. And what kinds of jobs do we win at? And how do we do that? And you need all that to go backwards traceable back to the beginning. And I think that the more a construction company does that kind of thing, where there's a feedback loop from the front end to the back end, they're going to become better at delivering in a more profitable and more efficient way. And we need to provide tools to be able to do that. And it's also something where, like, nobody really does it that way. They all talk about how they'd like to do it that way, but they don't. And those are the kinds of things where we want to provide the tools to be able to do that easily.
So data becomes the asset again. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is like they're able to operate the business because they have better data to see kind of like, what is my CAC? What is my cost as acquisition of these customers through, all that kind of thing, just like any normal business would be.
Just like any normal business.
Yeah.
Yes.
So almost every business is trying to get to where they can make decisions by data.
And data is, if you're putting three big categories together, I've always said this, like, it's been people, materials, and data. Like, those are the 3 big buckets of problem. And you could take any problems that construction has, they fall in those 3. So there's a labor shortage. There's people, So, and really it's not the people swinging the hammers. It's not really, that's not where the labor shortage is. Everybody tries to equate that it's like people getting into the trades or whatever. It's people who can supervise those people. Supervision. If I'm going to expand to other states, like if I'm working in Ohio and Kentucky and I want to start working in 10 states, well, I need people to manage those jobs. There's a shortage of that. There's a shortage of service technicians. The service technicians in this country are, I think the average age is like 56 years old or something like that.
Wow.
Okay, well then if the average age gets to 65, what kind of shortage are we going to have? Well, we need technology to bring on the next wave and the next, that kind of thing. So those are just problems that we have, but you can't do that accurately or deliver that training or deliver that without technology. It's just not possible. Like the problems that we're having, you just can't do without technology.
And it's actually one of those types of jobs that will like be the last one like robotics will take. I mean, it really is because it's such a like, it's basically kind of, you go to you do like a service call, right? Or like, I remember doing service calls as an electrician. It was like, you have to go there, assess the situation, run all the scenarios, and then decide what to do. And that's going to be it could be, I don't know the way AI is moving, but it seems like it'll be a long time before a robot will be able to come to your house and do that.
Oh yeah. I don't think it ever will be, but we talk about AI assist a lot in our industry. Like AI is never going to make the decisions for you. People shouldn't be afraid of AI. Like I'm not a proponent of AI personally. Like I know that we sell it, that we have it, but the way IFS does it is different than what we're talking about with ChatGPT or that kind of thing.
Right.
AI should help you make a decision. It should bring you that information so that way you can make that decision. We were talking about that too. Like, there's no perfect decision. There's no perfect information and that kind of thing. But if you own your data, like you do with IFS, and that you get feedback from all the things that you do across your business, using your unique microeconomic data within your business and owning that data and not sharing that with other people so it stays a competitive advantage to make better decisions and get better at what you do, that is what we're that's the next phase. That's the next gen of ERP products, is that you're going to need something like that to stay competitive. And if you keep doing it the old ways, the people who are doing it the new ways, they're going to take the work from you. We don't want that to happen. And we care about the industry and clients and all that kind of stuff. So that's really what we're trying to do, is just solve those problems. They're unique.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a great way to look.
I'm newer, right, to the industry. What I'm asking, Tim, is what you described in construction sounds a lot like what we've experienced and Scott experienced in engineering to order. And so what I'm interested in learning better is about, I hear similarities there, but I know they're not the same. So what is it about construction that's different from an engineering to order manufacturing company that needs to make, because when you said everything's different, that's what I would hear from an engineering to order. Well, it's the same, or make the same house, the same building, or the same machine, but these 30% or 50 or whatever change. So, but I know it's not the same. So what is different about construction that I just don't know?
I would say that it's because you're not, as a manufacturing company, you're in control of what you're making. You have a customer that's designing a part. So like if that part gets changed, you should be able to take that change and quickly put it into production, right? And that's what you guys provide, is the ability for a client to change something slightly or a new revision on a product. And that changes, I was talking to somebody, we were talking about seats. Okay. Like, I don't know if you knew this or not, but like in the trucking space, every seat is different. So
yes,
when Volvo or Mack or whatever, when they make a truck, the seat is very specific and no two seats are the same. They might have a refrigerator. They might have one armrest too. They have all these different materials that you can make the seat out of. Some of them hook up to a thing with a heads up display where like if the driver's falling asleep, it'll tell and it'll start shaking. Okay. Well, like you get to option all of that stuff out. Well, then there's also like the frame of the truck. If they change the frames or the cabs or whatever, the metal that attaches the seat to the floor and all that other kind of stuff, those might have slight different variations in bends or cuts, CNC, laser, or whatever. Well, there might be a subcontractor that you're working with. All of those things, that sounds really complicated, right? That's actually incredibly simple compared to a construction project. So in a construction project, it's not just the customer making a change for the manufacturing team. It is the changes that are affecting you are from another subcontractor maybe. They're not from the general, they're not from the customer, they're from another sub. But then there might be one that the general wants to change. There might be one that the customer wants to change midstream. It's that design, kind of thing. It's constantly changing. And what you want to do is you want to get to a formal set of plans that we're going to go build. Now, after the trades come in and they start, ground up, right? Well, things will change again. So if you're down the chain, you have this thing that you're doing, but like hopefully the change isn't super crazy or it's not, but sometimes it is. And those are the kinds of things where you need to have a collaborative kind of environment to be able to respond to those things, but you're also not in control of those things. So when you're not in control, what you can control is how quickly you respond to the new inputs to the project to get it done the way that you want to do that. And that is what's different about it, is that it's not necessarily this part changed, so we're going to make it differently and cut the metal differently, and then we're going to keep making it on the same assembly line. we are changing everything maybe about what we're going to do. And those revisions, you're never working off the initial set of plans is never the final set of plans. And the as-builts at the end, you want to be able to backwards trace through all of those different revisions, just like you do in manufacturing. I want to be able to revert back. Maybe if I have a quality issue, I want to revert back to another set of plans and say like, well, here is where we made that change. And this is why this isn't working like we thought it would, right? So there's similarities, but it's just different. And you're never going to do that again. So in construction, you are never going to make that, whatever you're making, there's a good possibility you're never going to make that thing ever again. So there's nothing to be gained from like a repetitive standpoint like that.
Right.
It's more about this is what we're making this time and how quickly can we put it together, and different, teams that are working on different projects and different GCs and subs and whatever, they're better at that than others. And you don't know, like, you just don't know how it's going to work out until the end.
I see the similarities, or there's a lot of them. It's like, it really comes down to like, I think I read a book years ago about like ETO, like instead of measuring cost, you should measure lead time, because it's actually a better measurement to work with, because if you try to minimize cost, you'll make decisions that make no sense from an engineer to order or a one piece flow or one single job type of operation, because you can't optimize cost like you can with high production.
Correct.
So it's it's really about how fast you can react and how fast can you take that change and propagate it downstream. Like this stacking effect of what you're describing is like, oh, I changed this. There's actually an example of this that happened to be this week is we're having this house built, and they realized that the grade for under the garage with the dirt wasn't good enough to actually, so they have to backfill it and then put like gravel in there and compact it. And they're like, well, if you want, for a little bit more money, of course, we could actually excavate that, and you could have a suspended slab and you get 600 and something square feet of extra space. And I'm like, but then we're like, what can we do with the space? Then it just, this propagation of we should put a window there. We should put a door there. They're like, wait a minute, that window hits an I-beam and it
changes
like,
everything.
Oh my gosh. It's like all these things happen and you're like, how much am I spending on this? Well, it's like, I thought it was going to be cool, but now it's like.
But what's your KPI, right? Finished square footage.
Oh,
it always costs more to build a house, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But finished square footage at the end of it is what your asset value at the end of that house.
That's it.
What's your resale value? Is it going to be better because you have the extra square foot? And does the extra cost justify the extra? You got to keep that in mind, right?
Exactly right.
It would be cool to have this, right?
Yeah.
Well, what is the reason behind it? And when you're talking your own house.
Sure, yeah.
Cool factor is big.
Let's be honest. When we're talking commercial products, it's more about,
Yeah, absolutely.
But like they're very similar. And that's exactly the point that I'm, you make one little change and it changes everything.
Oh, yeah.
And the structure is different now. So the structure has to be, we need a better beam.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the main beam going across the house, we figured that was going to be 28 feet or whatever it was. Well, now it's 36. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and now that it's 36, we have to build it out of a different kind of material. So your beam cost went from $8,000 to 20. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And then, okay, well, now I see why the price is going up, right? Now we're, all right, well, does that justify that kind of thing? With CAD models, you can get a real good impact talking about that kind of thing. Let's move this beam, let's make this structure or whatever. And then it'll take your bill of materials and it'll be like, here's what that material cost is going to be, right?
Right.
It's very easy to get that cost. It's more about well, all right, now what does that do lead time wise? The new beam that we got to get, how long is that going to take to get?
Oh, yeah.
What does that do to the project? I thought this was going to be done this summer so I could have a 4th of July party, right?
Right.
All right, well, now it's not going to be done until September. Those are the kinds of things where it's like, that impacts things. Those are the kinds of things where everything changes, but you need to be able to react to that and you need to be able to deliver on that. And if that's what the client wants, then that's what you want to do. But how quickly can you pivot? And construction projects are becoming less like that now. They do a lot of that design work on the front end, but that doesn't mean that there aren't changes throughout the project that you still have to react to even after you've done all the work on the front end.
Makes a lot of sense. It's like there's just more variability, more chance of a ripple effect than you would with. There's still the ripple effect in ETO, but you're controlling more of the variables because you're building it in your plant. Kind of, when I was in the company we used to do is use packaging machinery, you kind of know what the box your packaging looks like. So the variability is usually in the guides or the glue. There's a lot of variability, but it's a known thing. Whereas when you start getting into construction, there's like these human element of preference that starts coming into it. And then, like you said, then you're also subject to the supply chain issues. Like this beam, we can't get it anymore. That material doesn't exist. It's like there's a worldwide shortage of this thing. We need to pivot here, and now we've got to reinforce it a different way, and we're going to pour another footer here, and that's just going to be what that is. And I can see where that could be. If you could solve that problem, it's
So how
valuable.
do construction softwares? I mean, we talk about the CAD, and that's of course where we have our expertise. But we talk about construction. How does CAD and construction, how does that work in terms of they're doing that design? It's the same problem. They need to get that design into ERP, and and you say about IFS, and how does those packages help people respond faster?
Yeah. So we don't do it in the US as much as we probably should, but it's just the way everything in the US is different about construction. It just is, like the way it's built, the way
Different
it's costed,
from,
the way that construction projects get delivered. A lot of construction
you said it's different. We don't do it in the US. We don't do something that's different from
With CAD.
someone else.
So CAD, they'll do like digital twins.
Mm-hmm.
So like that is a thing that we do now. Instead of handing over a set of plans, there's a CAD model that goes with it, the as-built, right? But it's not really being built as it goes. It's more of like the project, it's a project closeout step to like take all the things that we've done and all the changes and revisions that were made and make that model and then hand that over to the customer, which they're going to do with that whatever, right? But a lot of electrical contractors or mechanical contractors work on these big ground up projects for GCs to get the maintenance contract after the fact. So if you work on that project and you do that electrical, you designed it. Like, I designed this electrical system. I designed this sprinkler system. I designed this. Well, then I'm uniquely positioned to come in with an MSA and say like, well, we're the ones that put it in, so let me maintain it for you. Because I think this might be global, but might be a US thing. But I know that the US stats are, if it costs $1 million to make a building, it's going to cost $3 million over the next 30 years to maintain it, right? So it's a $4 million building. Those are the kinds of things where like the money in maintaining and operating that building and doing the facilities maintenance is more so than building it from the front end, right? And so how do we help those contractors who want to build it more efficiently, but also come in and do that maintenance work on the back end? How are you able to control all that data and own that data for that building, and then come in and you have a unique differentiation for that? Those are all questions that, we're trying to solve for as well. But like, that is a master service agreement. Is service contractors are more profitable than ground up construction. It's just a fact.
It's recurring revenue.
Yeah. And they charge more for it. It's usually a break fix kind of solution. So you're paying the premium for somebody to come out, help you get something back online when it's offline. Those are the kinds of things where like there's better margin in that than there is in the initial construction, and there's more of it like over time. So as an ongoing concern, you want to have that recurring revenue where you have maintenance agreements that go along with that. Well, I think you're better able to serve your clients in a more cost-effective and efficient manner if we utilize more CAD, if we do more building modeling and we understand how these systems work. And I can go in and pull up a little modular component of the building. Let's say it's like the heat pump and the plenum that goes out of that or whatever it is, right? I can just pull up that thing and then I can see all the parts that were used to make it, where it came from, what the sourcing, data was, and I can pull that part list up immediately and I can go put a quote out and I can go fix it. And I can get that quick. And the quicker you can do those kinds of things, the better off. A client likes a contractor that comes in and does things the right way quickly. Like, at the end of the day, they're going to prefer that vendor over any other vendor. So those are the kinds of things where it does matter that these things become more incorporated into what we're doing. You're able to see little changes and how the butterfly effect and all that stuff from the front end, but then you're also able to better maintain on the back end. And it's just not a thing that everybody does these days, because it requires technology and the people who understand that kind of thing, and detailers. And most GCs have their own detailing team that do. Big GCs have their own detailing team that they have a pretty good idea of what that maintenance or what that MEP contractor is going to cost. They kind of bid their own. Like, if I was the MEP, what would I bid on this kind of thing? So that way they know what within a range what their quotes are going to be on that. That's not a complete solution. Like, that's not a complete solution through everything, but that's becoming more of a thing. And the contractors that can deliver on that are going to be better positioned for more of the complexity that comes. It's one of those things where rework is the number one cause of these kinds of problems. And that is the perfect example of exactly what we're trying to avoid. If you are telling people where you put stuff as the project goes, and pointing out on the model where, you know what I mean? It becomes a little easier to do that. Now, sharing that model, this is the other thing. GCs don't really like to share their whole schedule, share their whole model. They want to just give you what you need. Now, this is where CAD Talk comes into play, and that deal that we were working on. You got Plant 3D, Revit, Tekla, Strumis, whatever. There's all these different 3D models. Well, like, they're going to give the model to the sub. The GC is going to give the model to the sub. The engineering company is going to give the model to the GC that gives it. I'm working off of different kinds of models and different software, because Plant 3D is different than Revit, which is different than Tekla. Okay. But I need to work with all of those systems.
I saw in a video, it was Jeff Bezos was like, you want to bet on things that going to happen in 10 years, 20 years. They're going to be human, just human, right? And my only point was, what's more likely that we'll all just kumbaya, come together and say, yes, we'll share models, we'll share IP, we'll just share everything, or we'll get better at handling changes because we're not going to change the other thing.
Right. And I think we've been banging on getting better at change for 20 years.
Yes.
And I still think that there's a lot to be desired there, but there's also like, there's a ceiling on it, right? If somebody would come up with a thing where it's like Procore for CAD kind of thing on the front end that engineers and architects could use, where there's like a, we're all on the same thing, but you can't change anything other than what your, permissions based kind of, I think that would be interesting. But at the same time, until something like that comes about and everybody agrees that they're going to use something like that, we just have to deal with it. Like that's where we are right now. We just have to deal with it. And that's why we need kind of solutions like ours.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting because you think about this, sometimes the people think of the business as being like the thing that you do, but it's actually the entire system that you use to do that thing. And then when you start like agreeing on systems, you actually take away part of your competitive advantage.
Correct.
And people don't realize that. They're like, why can't everybody get on the same page with this? I'm like, because that's part of their system that makes them viable business.
That's right.
And some people don't get that. Like it's the business isn't just the thing. Like people talk about software, the business isn't the code.
Sure. And you go into construction, a lot of construction companies' competitive advantages are the operations people. They're their competitive advantage. Now, we go into clients all the time where it's like, okay, well, what if this guy, and we used to say hit by a bus. The more appropriate, you say, what if he wins the lottery? Yeah. So what if this guy wins the lottery and quits? What happens? It's like, well, there's a lot of stuff in his head that leaves the business. And it's like, okay, well, let's start documenting some of that stuff, right? Let's figure out our process. Let's figure out all the little things that need to happen. And we got these spreadsheets and you know what I mean? Let's standardize at least the internal business processes that we've got, because that becomes a competitive advantage when everybody I'm a guy that likes to know what's going on. Like whether I can influence it or control it or whatever, I just like to understand all of it, right? I just like to know what's going on. And I think inside a business, when you get to a certain level, you need to, especially like if you're an executive on the project team or you're an executive in accounting, or you need to know what's going on. Because a lot of times it seems like there's a battle between accounting and operations and construction, because operations like, we're the ones that actually get this done. How you guys do the cost and, all that stuff, that's not of our concern. And on the other side, the accounting team is trying to like tell them how to do their job kind of thing, because it's like, this is costing us money. Neither one of them, that's not a productive conversation necessarily. We need to be working together. Like it matters. Accounting should matter to operations and operations should matter to accounting. And we need to come to an agreement and we need to standardize the way that we do things and deliver things as part of a foundation. There's always going to be little changes and nuances over the top of that, but like the way that we deliver a project should be standardized across the coding or the project type or those kinds of, everybody does it a little differently. So
sometimes that's their special sauce.
That is their special sauce.
Yeah.
And you don't want to standardize everything, and you don't want to go to a multi-tenant cloud where everybody does the same thing, because like that's pretty much how Procore works. They're the only ones that really do it that way, but they're multi-tenant. Everybody does it the same way. Like all project management is done almost identical. If you're using Procore and you're working with a GC who uses Procore, you're going to be running that project the same way. Now, communication-wise, is that a good thing? Yeah, a little bit of standardization is good, but like, is there anything special about my Procore instance versus yours? Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. The secret sauce is in the back end, the ERP, the system of record. That's where the secret sauce lives. Why are we buying this equipment? Should we rent this equipment? Should we buy now for this material that we need, or should we buy later? All of that, that's what drives your margin. It's not about those kinds of decisions are what drive your margin, not whether or not my submittal went out to everybody and they responded or not. Like that's execution. Margin is driven on the back end with procurement and with how a project is scheduled and how it's delivered on time, on budget, and how we deal with changes. That's all in the ERP.
I feel like I have a lot better understanding now of this. This makes a lot of sense.
Construction, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot, like I said, there's a huge overlap. It's like, I think the principles will carry over, but there's like, just the amount of variability is higher. Even from ETO. I mean, ETO is pretty variable. I remember you would talk to people who do high production and they just wouldn't get it, like how that world is. And then from a construction standpoint, just like 10x that. And then because you have the environment variables and everything else and the multiple contractor variables and stuff like that, that just kind of cause, I can see why that would be a hard problem to solve.
It's infinite. The variables become, I don't know if it is infinite, but it's pretty close to infinite. More than you want to count.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't control them all. It's how you respond. That's it.
That was really helpful for me to understand sort of the depth of construction. And so, Tim, when you're talking to clients and you're talking about IFS, these are all the sort of problems that you're seeing. Where do you just continue to see the tools get better for change, and that's really just the advancements, or is there something out there, do you sort of the holy grail still?
Well, what construction specific ERP platforms, we kind of alluded to this at the beginning, they're cost driven. Okay. Well, cost is important. Okay. We need to control costs. And like with this AI stuff, that's another kind of scary thing where like we have all that stuff inside of our system, right? All the core, mission critical stuff is inside the system. Now, we don't do collaborative project management. So like, I didn't want to sound like I'm, talking bad about Procore. It's required. Like I need that, right? But that's not everything. That's not why a project is successful or not. Right. Procore is not the reason. The reason is how you designed it from the beginning, how you bought the material, how it's shipped to the job site, how it's controlled in the schedule, right? All that stuff is EOP stuff. So we need to have more of a mission critical all-in-one so we can get all that data and mine that data for those kinds of decisions. Who do we need to hire and where? Right? What's the current rate? What's the material pricing? What's it looking like it's going to do? Is it going to go up? Is copper going up or is it going down? Is steel going up or down? Those kinds of things. Let's do a cash flow scenario. Okay. So like, can I do scenario planning with my cash flow based on my AP? And is my AP in the system or out of the system? Is my AR in the system or out of the system? Is my change management in the system or out of the system? Well, you can't predict cash flow without what is coming. Things that are pending that you're going to have to pay, or that you're going to be getting in revenue that you haven't gotten yet. Accrual accounting. You got to be able to put it all together and predict your cash flow with different scenarios, because that is really what construction companies are in a big crunch. Until you get to a certain critical mass, all of your cash is going back into the business. You're never really able to capital plan, which is why we talk to clients who are a little bit bigger. We have a little bit more robust, more full-featured application. Once clients get above about $300 million, that's when they start doing capital planning motions, right? They're able to save some money and they're able to predict these kinds of things, and they have a lot of assets and depreciation and that kind of thing. Another thing that most construction ERPs don't do, right? So we need to be able to make these kinds of decisions for the assets that we have, how we're going to deliver, what our schedule is, how we're going to buy stuff, that kind of thing. And I think with what we offer, that's what attracted me to IFS from the beginning. Was I was just like, instead of selling, 8 systems to somebody of which they controlled none of it, and it's all ETL integration instead of workflow integration, right? That's not the way of the future. That's the way it's done now, but that's not the way of the future. And that's kind of what we're trying to evangelize and, take a look at us, because we are different, but better in a lot of ways.
Yeah. That's like kind of so it is like a little bit of a bridge of like saying like this worked. And we did that, because you think about like in the 80s, in the 70s, that's the way manufacturing was. So you're seeing kind of almost a repeat of that, where there was like 8, 20, 40 systems that these people would use, and a lot of it would be paper too. And then there was a consolidation, and like when MRP came out and then ERP came out, and then we're seeing, okay, there's a similar pattern happening in construction.
And that, listen to Kevin Miller when you were talking about that, and Kevin mentioned something about manufacturing has always been a laggard with technology. I giggle.
Compared to construction, it's high speed.
Yeah. Like construction is the lag. Like it is a laggard for sure.
It's a laggard of laggards, it sounds like.
So those are the kinds of things, like getting somebody to go from a legacy system to like something like what IFS is requires a lot of conversation, because it's very different. It's just very different. But we're talking about the whole business now. There's not a construction company I can walk into and not have a legit conversation with somebody about whatever their issues are, which makes it unique for us that there's an opening to have a discussion around business problems that then lead to other areas, right? And then how do we make sure that you are getting the best bang for the buck? And the best bang for buck right now is data. You have to own it. Data, never heard a construction company talk about how valuable their data is, but I don't think they realize how much data they actually are owning, that they have at their fingertips that can help them make better decisions and help them make more money. And they're not leveraging it. A lost opportunity in the market.
Oh yeah.
So we're trying to help with that.
Just in general, I think we talked about this and that, and data is the asset podcast, which is like the data will actually start becoming worth more than the thing that you're doing.
Correct.
At some point.
I think that is where we're headed. That your data is what's going to be your determining factor. Now, IFS, like that's one of the things that I really like about what we do. We're not hooking to ChatGPT. Like you're not sharing your information, with other people. This is a capital expenditure. And when you talk to people who are capital expenditures, it's better conversation than saying, yeah, you're going to rent this. And at the end of the rental period, I might give it to you in a spreadsheet that won't make any sense, at the end of it or whatever, but that's not what's going to help you. So we're trying to make long-term partnerships and things like that. So we're cloud. We go on Azure. but like you could host it yourself. You
Right.
could, you know,
I've had
giving
customers.
clients options, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's like that's the dark side maybe of the SaaS kind of offering is that legally you have to be able to give them the data, but you don't have to give it to them in a way they can use it.
Correct.
You know, and I think a lot of people realize that. I think we
I explain it like skeleton in the flesh, right? So like your data is the flesh, right? But it means nothing without the skeleton of the SaaS software that you have. And as soon as you take that out, you're just a puddle on the floor. And that's not helpful. We need to be able to own that, mine that, use it for our own benefit because like it's our data using your software. So like I feel like we should own that. And that's going to click for people eventually.
Oh yeah, I think we actually had an example of this. We had expense software that I won't say the name, but like we came up with the expense software, and then it occurred to us like all those receipts and all those reports were still in there, and we moved to a different one, and then it was like, hey, did we get that data? And it was like, oh yeah, we'll go back, and they gave it to us in this like horrible spreadsheet. None of the receipt images were there. Like you just couldn't use it. So we ever got audited, we were like in trouble. I'm like, I think we're just gonna have to go back and buy a seat of that thing so we keep at least to 7 more years.
And they call that vendor lock.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like that is what it's called. It's vendor lock.
Oh yeah.
What you said about the industry and related to Scott and his experience in engineering order, what I really appreciate is that you're passionate about it. That's what I got from Scott. And I think you both were right in the sense that once you get involved in something, you see the people it touches and how valuable it is. On the surface, it's not flashy and sexy and like it's not Hollywood and this, but like it is what moves our lives every day.
That's right.
Day in and day out. We had a conversation yesterday with the team and I said, you know, what we do at CAD Talk touches basically, we're helping manufacturing companies and you interact with those every day. You may not know that, but everything that you're interacting with in some way you're connected to that. That's a powerful thing.
It is. Yeah. Those are the kinds of things where we talk about, you know, if we're talking to a steel fabricator, we're talking about whatever, they have to buy that stuff from somebody. And switchgear they got to buy that stuff from somebody, right?
Yeah.
Well, those are manufacturing companies. In fact, I sat in on one where I did a talk at a Union Electrical Symposium thing, and they were talking, what was the wire company? But anyway, instead of stocking all these different colors of wire, they made this thing where like it's white insulator that they put through a machine. And if you want 200 feet of purple, they print the purple on the wire. So they don't have to stock all these different colors, which is making the price better for people, but it also makes it that way it's easier for them to manufacture too.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody.